Welcome to another episode of Just One More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justonemorefix.com or on Twitter at justonemorefix. If you like us, you can support us with Patreon, and you can give us a rating and review at iTunes or wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to talk about exploring player motivations. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Willie D. Nelson from All Things Good and Nerdy, a pop culture podcast, part of the Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other tantalizingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Welcome to that episode of Just One More Fix. Couple quick announcements before we get things rolling as usual. I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing about it, but HoosierCon is coming up, and that is the 22nd to 24th of March. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and there are still two spots open in my Troubadours game. So if you are looking to be, or if you're going to be at HoosierCon and you're looking to get in on some Shakespearean madness, go ahead and hop on there and sign up. We got two spots left open. Along with the what?
I feel like Shakespearean madness is probably like a back alley term for syphilis. Like it's the right era. Got that Shakespearean
madness. That's great. Right on. Along with running Troubadours, there will be... I've done some revisions of some of the playbooks and taken some suggestions that we've got from playtesting and whatnot, and have updated quite a bit of the play materials. So those will be getting uploaded to the Patreon probably within the next couple of days. I got all the editing of them done. Now I just have to compile it into one big file, so it's not, 6 different playbooks and then the performance sheet and all that kind of stuff. So look for that on the Patreon. It should be coming very soon. And last announcement is that we have an Indie RPG Day coming up at the end of March, so we'll be scheduling that here very soon. It looks like we're going to be running Dogs in the Vineyard and Pip Core Systems. So hope to see you guys there at Game on South 7th and Terre Haute. And I think that's it. So we're going to jump right into this. So Lacey, this was kind of your idea. So you want to set this one up?
Yeah, sure. So I made a goal to start blogging this year. And in order to do that, I thought maybe I should read other people's blogs and see what the blog. So where we're at now, I've spent several hours of reading blogs in the last 3 weeks, and I've read more than 20 gaming blogs in the last 3 weeks.
So when you say you read the blogs, do you mean like you read a couple posts or like...
Like I spent at least 10 minutes reading each blog.
Right on.
Yeah. So, which is usually a couple of posts, depends on how long-winded the person is. But,
right.
Anyhow, so one of those I looked at was Jeff Rent's blog, and he had a link to this test, which I'm 100% sure that I've seen before, and I know it's been around for a while, but I had just kind of forgotten about it, and I'm almost certain that I took it at one point and was like, yeah, that was neat, whatever.
Right.
Probably before we started doing this, or maybe in the middle and I just didn't care. I don't know. Hard to say. Anyway, it struck me as much more interesting this time, and I posted it on our, a link to it on our Facebook group.
Right.
And pretty much everybody that does the podcast with us at one point or another has taken the quiz and posted their results. So I was not surprised by any of them. Knowing the people and gaming with them frequently.
Right.
But I thought kind of interesting after that, like, what if you took it a step farther? Like, how can that help me run a game for these people? Or how does that inform the choices I make as far as what games to run and what games I enjoy playing in? Or maybe even what particular scenarios have landed among my greatest of all time. So just to give everybody an idea for if you haven't looked at it, there are 6 different categories of player type.
Before you get into categories, just so everyone knows, we'll put a link to this in the show notes so you guys can go take it on your own or use this as a tool for your players to take it as well and kind of see what you think about it. But so it measures 6 different categories, and they are...
So socializer, which is pretty self-explanatory. These are your players that enjoy interaction and social connection. Free spirits. They like autonomy. They like to just be able to go out and create things and explore the world that you've created. The achiever, who likes to learn new things and overcome challenges and improve their character. Philanthropist, they like purpose, altruism, giving back and enriching the lives of others. to me, that means not just as a character too. Like at the table, like you want to make sure other people are having a good experience. Is kind of what I got out of that a little bit. And your player is reward motivated. And then there's your disruptors, and they're all about change and shaking up the system. And that can be through either positive or negative means.
Right.
So those are the six types in summary.
Before we get into like results and that kind of stuff, one of the first things that really I kind of enjoyed about this one is that you could relate a lot of these categories to the classic ones that you see. But what I enjoyed is that it didn't have power gamer, mad scientist, simulationist, or storyteller, and those like there's been this kind of categorization that has been around for quite a while now. And while I think those are relevant categories, but once you kind of
titles to me imply that there's a right way to game.
That I agree with that 100%. And also when you categorize things and they've been that way for a long time, you just sort of shut off when somebody says, well, when you deal with the power gamer or when you deal with you just sort of are like, yeah, I've been doing this for a while. I get it. Okay. You're not telling me anything new. And you kind of unplug and just go at it a different way. One of the things that I liked about this is it talked more about like how they all come together, because no one is 100% power gamer or 100% philanthropist. It's just not the way it works.
Everybody was a breakdown of percentage, and not one single person that took it was more than was the highest. 22% is the highest percentage out of all the ones that I wrote down.
Right. Well, and
the spread isn't that great either. So some of them I might be like, I'm 20% free spirit, 18% player. Like we're not talking about a huge wide margin either. It's a fairly kind of central diagram with peaks in certain areas.
So one of my things that I don't like about the way this is set up, so like in general, I like this whole thing, and I think it's kind of useful, right? If you kind of put the right spin on it. But before we go down that path, I want to touch on real quickly why I don't like some of these things, okay? And so it's one of these tests that you take that is strongly agree, neither agree or disagree, and then disagree, strongly disagree, right? So it's very similar to a screening tool we used for our hiring processes for when I was an operations manager, right? And one of the things that I don't like about it is when you put these things in front of people, sometimes there's a tendency to be like, well, I really like this, but like I wouldn't say I strongly, so that you end up with a lot of middle of the road, right? Which is one of my criticisms for this, because when I look at the things that it shows in front of me for how I tested on this thing, it's very narrow, right? The total spread is about 6 points, 7 points, okay, of spread between these 6 categories in terms of percentage, okay? So while I think there's something to be gained there, I think that if you were to take this as a tool, or wanted your players to take this as a tool, I wouldn't tell them to go one end or the other 100%, but I would say be generous with what you agree or what you don't agree on, because the idea is to find the ends, right? The middle isn't really that important. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at what you're as at the high end and what it's the low end, right? And I think in the way they phrase these things, sometimes there's this just tendency to try and kind of either agree or disagree, but not put it on the strong ends, because it says like things like, do you like social conflict in your games? And you might say, well, I do, but I don't want to strongly agree with that, because I don't want to have arguments at the table, right? But I don't feel like that's what you're going for with this kind of a thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
I would view a question like that more like, how often do I want to participate in that?
Right. Well,
do I want it at every single game session or just some?
So just,
I don't know, but I think
food for thought.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, and I think it's important too when you're saying there's not a huge spread, in that nobody only wants one kind of challenge.
100%.
So, variety is always good. Most of us aren't like, I don't ever want to get any gold.
Right.
Never. Take it away from me. I am Socrates.
Right.
I will live a life of poverty and preach to the people.
Well, and then, when you get down into what I think some of these categories represent, even if you are like, no one wants to be 100% rewards based for what your character gets, right? You want some social things that you can't necessarily measure and put a number value on, right? Or everyone wants a certain amount of interaction at the table, because otherwise you're probably not playing an RPG. You're playing something like Descent or something along those lines, or just like straight up Warhammer 40K where there's no characterization, right? And that's fine, that's what you want. But if you sat down to play an RPG, I feel like there's a general mixing of all of these categories for what you're looking for in a game.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
How do you want to do this? Do you want to like break ours down and talk about that, or
sure, yeah, that sounds good. So we kind of talk about what we see at the table in regards to these things.
Just want to do us as individuals first, or
do you do you want to just like look at mine and say like what you think you gleaned about me?
Ooh, okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, okay, sure. So like I said, I'm going to focus on the high end and on the low end, right? And so your two highest are Achiever and Philanthropist at 20%.
Dead nuts tied.
So, and I think it's important to note there's six categories and they're based on percentages, right? So you have possibility of 0 to 100% of across all of these things, but if you had 101, then you have 0 in the rest, right?
So it was interesting that my lowest one was the lowest.
Oh yeah,
of everyone.
Well, see, so your two highest are Achiever and Philanthropist. So based off of that, Philanthropist is
that's purpose and altruism,
right? And then
Achiever is like mastery, learning new things, improving skills, overcoming challenges, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And then philanthropy is more like giving back. And
so of those, the one that strikes me as kind of odd is the Achiever one, because I feel like in that it implies some system mastery, right? And that's not what you go to gaming for. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you want to achieve things and get tasks, but my perception of it has always been, I need to know how the game works and the mechanics of what I can do, but you're not chasing down the feat tree to find the complete optimization of your character. That's not what you usually do. Is that fair to say?
I don't know. I don't know if the feat tree is a fair thing, but like I enjoy new abilities, like World of Darkness, you know, like new disciplines are cool, or like when we did 7C. I very much wanted to learn like a sword school because I thought that would be cool.
Right. What I'm saying though is in terms of not like learning new abilities, but I'm talking about like, to me, what this says, if this is your highest, it says to me that you want mastery, like system mastery.
Oh,
do you want to be rewarded for, I feel like that doesn't have to go in there, but it's kind of implied in it when it talks about mastery.
I thought of that
things.
as like the player thing. Like you're actually playing a game and you're at it for rewards as a player. Like an Achiever to me is character advancement.
Okay, I can see that. That's just kind of one of my things when it says like...
which is sort of the same thing.
It's close.
I mean, experience is kind of...
Right. So it's close, but I guess that if I'm looking at that, that's one of the things that kind of surprised me, and one of those things, and I guess it's just something to keep in mind. The philanthropy part one didn't surprise me much. What did, though, is at the bottom is your lowest is by a lot is 9, and the next one closest to that is 16, was Disruptor at 9. And that really surprised me because I've seen you... take a great deal of joy in playing LARPs where you were 100% the disruptor and causing problems isn't the right word, but causing strife and difficulty and imposing your will on people.
Would never cause strife and difficulty for anyone else.
So I guess that's the one that surprised me the most, is because looking at it in terms of how you look at the games we like to play. So when we play World of Darkness, right, that's a part of all of our World of Darkness games, whether that's players versus players at the table, or whether that's against NPCs in the game or whatever, or in the LARP sense where it's almost always player versus player. That's a big part of that, and I think it's fair to say everyone that sits down at our table really enjoys that aspect of World of Darkness. Now, you may not want that when you sit down and play a D&D game, maybe, but when you sit down for some World of Darkness, that's what a lot of the people, the majority of the people that sit down at our table, I feel like they're coming there for. And I think the statistics would bear that out. Right? So, I guess that's the one thing that surprised me the most, because while I don't think that you're playing in games and trying to destroy the world or break the world or that kind of thing, that's not the side of this that I feel like you take, but I do think that you definitely don't have a problem of player versus player interaction, and you definitely don't have a problem with making things difficult for people. Not like in an interpersonal way, like it's strictly in an in-game character way where you're not afraid to make things hard for other characters to get what you want. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess where it falls for me is the disrupting part. I don't mind it when it's part of like the socialized interaction. But if you're talking about like trying to mess up the world or mess up the system, I don't really like that. I don't know.
Right. No, I agree with that. That's sort of when everybody sits down to play a game, you're there to play that game and have that experience. If you don't want that experience, then just don't play that game, right? So I 100% agree with that. But like I've seen you be a plotter. you know, and I've seen those moments of glee in a LARP where it's like this moment comes and you have this Zamisi Prince and all this stuff happens and comes to pass and you win and it feels good and it's fun, you know. I
feel like LARPs are almost their own thing. Like if I did the survey again and thought only about LARP, that might change my answers.
I think it might, but the only trick to it is the way that we set up our World of Darkness games tabletop are very similar to how the LARP runs. Now, maybe there's less political interaction.
Still, it's not every game that we're playing.
No, you're right. You know? But I think when I sat down to do this, I was thinking broadly about all the games that I play, I guess. So, yeah. So those are the things that jumped out at me right away was those two things they're pretty far apart, I guess. Was there anything on there that surprised you that you saw?
About mine or yours?
Yours.
I don't know. Not really. No. I think that is pretty, honestly, I would think like Free Spirit would probably be my lowest. I'm surprised that it was not lower than Disruptor. I think it depends on how you like, because do I want to explore new things in caves? Yes, but I need you to give me structure too. Like just, and so it doesn't surprise me that yours is Free Spirit because that's what playing in a lot of your games feels like is just wandering around in the darkness sometimes.
Well, mostly.
So like I can see that sort of like, you know, more open world.
Right.
I would see Kurt as more of that too. Was kind of surprised that his Free Spirit wasn't higher as well. He didn't post his exact numbers though, so it might have been really close. But yeah, that kind of they have a name for it in video games, right? Where you're just like kind of like that Minecraft-y sort of thing, where you're just sort of about without a specific
open world,
mission.
I think is what they call it, something like that.
I want a mission, a series of missions. That was my hardest part when we started LARPing, was it's kind of like create your own fun. Like if you go to a LARP and you don't have goals of your own,
for your luck,
you're kind of just hanging out in a room in a chair.
Right. Well, it does take a little while to get used to because there is the way a LARP works and the way a tabletop game works are two significantly different things. But I think that there are aspects to both and lessons to learn from both because
making goals for my characters has been probably my biggest takeaway from LARP.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When you took the test, your highest level was Free Spirit, and that was at 21%. And then your lowest was Achiever at 14%. So given that there's 6, it's a pretty narrow spread, really. Like there's not a big
highest
fluctuation
is 21
there.
And the lowest is 14. Yeah. I have almost every number, 20. No, okay, no, I guess 14, 15, 16,
1,
18,
counting down.
21, right?
But so the Free Spirit thing didn't really surprise me. I could see like you just enjoy going out and exploring without necessarily having to have a succinct thing in mind. And you usually make your own goals at the beginning too. Like you always have an agenda that you're working on when you're playing a character. Every time.
I do that because, one, it gives me something to do because I've played in a lot of games that don't have a lot of structure to them. And then I get frustrated because I'm like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing right now. So then I just make something for me to do so that I can occupy my time and not be completely disruptive, right? And so I was surprised that Free Spirit was the highest on there. I guess I look at that and like when I sit down to play in a game, I don't want you to tell me a story because I definitely don't want that. I don't want to just jump through the hoops that you lay in front of me, right? But I feel like I want to sit down to a game or a world that you've made for me. Does that make sense? You know, not just some thing for me to kind of stumble through, I guess. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why it's not a video game.
I should say that. I'm going to totally contradict myself. See, this is why I hate these things because I say that, right? But at the same time, the minute I feel hemmed in, I'm like, you know, I'm a terrible player. Essentially what the picture that I'm painting here. So like, but you know what I'm saying? Like
that's where the disruptor portion comes in.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like, I want to feel like I have some agency in the world, but I don't want to be led through Double Dragon 2. Right. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, and it's a hard thing to wrap your hands around, I guess, and kind of keep it together. But I don't know. It's a strange thing because I really, when I took this, I was blown away by well, how little difference there is between all of these things. And I thought, well, maybe I'm just the best player in the world. And that's what
well-rounded.
I learned from this, is that James is the guy you want at the table because he will do all of the things. Right? And it is true, because to a point, I really just like gaming, and I like playing any different kind of game for the most part. And the only thing that I have is that when I sit down to play whatever game it is, whether it's a D&D style game or Bluebeard's Bride or whatever it is, I want to play that game. Mm-hmm. I don't want to play the D&D version of Call of Cthulhu. I want to play, if you want to play in that game, that's fine. Let's just play Call of Cthulhu, right? That's my only qualm with any of it, I guess. So,
well, and when I look at the games that I have ran for you guys, the ones that you've liked the best and have had the most feedback for me are ones where I've kind of created a plot and then set you off on your own way to see what you will do with it. So like the World of Darkness game with you and Kurt that ended up, you guys turned into Risen.
Right.
It was very much like, well, I'm just going to do this and we're going to see what happens. And I kind of made a web of connectedness and just let you guys loose. Like, right. Here you go.
And
our
hang on, let me touch on that real quick though. So like, I agree with that 100%. But I feel like it touches back to what I was saying before. That's the World of Darkness. That's, in my mind, that's what you kind of do, is you build this world of connections and you drop your characters into it and watch the ripples and see what happens, right? And so while that game, I loved that game. It was a ton of fun.
But that's what it is to you, because that's how you've run it. And clearly that's what you enjoy.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Fair point. That's
fair.
How
many other World of Darkness games have you played in that weren't run by you?
A lot. Not recently.
Some, yeah.
But like JD used to run a ton of World of Dark. Like, I would say recently has been very few. But back in the day, I used to play in a lot of them because we had that's all we played for the longest time. Once we got off the D&D train, it was only vampire, only vampire, only vampire. Splash a werewolf, only vampire, only vampire. Splash a mage, only vampire. Heroes Run met Wraith. We never got off the ground. Vampire, vampire, vampire. Orpheus. Vampire, vampire, vampire. Right? So that's just the way it went, though. So, but I think that may be tied to the fact that JD was the one that ran a lot of the White Wolf that I played in, and he's also a LARP storyteller. So we kind of have similar sensibilities to the way we structure our games. But
I feel like the games I've played in of his are more goal-directed than yours are.
Okay. I can see that. What?
I don't know. There was just silence after that.
Okay, I didn't know if like you said I thought that was a bad thing or something. I was like, I don't know.
No, it's not. It's just different,
Yeah, it's all good.
No, there's no bad. There's just different.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So the other game that I think of is the Lamentations of the Flame Princess one that I'm running now. And that's, again, I've created a world. I gave you guys an overarching goal, but there are no subtle plot point stops on the way for you to
No, but that game has...
It's like, here's your mission, figure it out.
So let me draw two distinctions between those two games, right? Because they are both very free in a sense, okay? However, I think there's a very big difference between the two, because in one, you're right, World of Darkness, it's like, do what you want, have fun, cause mayhem, try not to get in too much trouble, whatever, leverage your power, be a bad guy. The other one, though, we're 3 witches, and we've been sent to Gévaudan to keep this werewolf alive, right? So that one, though, we have a very concrete goal that you set for us. Mm-hmm. So I think that while you didn't lay out a path to get there necessarily, but there was a very clear goal of this is what you have to do it as long as you guys can. Like, kind of like a foregone conclusion, they're eventually going to kill this beast, but keep it alive as long as you can, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, if history bears any truth, obviously they killed the beast eventually anyway. But my only point is, though, is that there is a very concrete thing thing to put your finger on and say, this is what we have to do, right? Everything else comes second to this. And those are the kind of games that I actually prefer. I shouldn't say that. Setting World of Darkness aside. Mm-hmm. Okay, those are the games that I kind of like, because it's one of those things where here's a problem, find a way to fix this. Mm-hmm. Or struggle within that world or whatever it is, right? Now, in World of Darkness, I don't have a problem with doing that, but I also think I'm cool to just go cause trouble and be a terrible vampire, right?
I'm just laughing at you right now.
Why?
Because it does not get any more concrete end goal than a Risen game. You were there for the sole purpose of retribution and
Okay,
revenge.
that's true, but that's not what that game started off as, though.
Well, yeah, but yeah, okay, that's fair.
So, like, 'cause the majority of that game was us.
It was basically the Dracula story,
Right?
Almost to the letter.
Well, but it's different enough to where
different NPCs, different setting, but that's the Dracula story.
Hang on, let me think now, because those are two games that are pretty recent, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to think if there are other games that you had ran,
Well, the other thing I was thinking of was Bluebeard's Bride, because again, you have a solid foregone conclusion, but the middle is complete exploration and mutual story creation, basically.
But see, the thing, I don't know how to put this. Like, the ending is a foregone conclusion 100%, right? But I'm playing that game more for the same reason why I like to watch horror movies. I want to play that game and I want to feel scared and I want to feel bad. Like in a fun way.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
And that's why I'm playing those. It's more about finding new ways to creep me out and fun things to explore or whatever, right? So I don't know how that fits into that whole thing, you know what I mean? But like that, and it's the same is true of when you ran it and when we played it at Gen Con and everything. Like, it's just I want to experience that like you do a horror movie, essentially. I don't know how that interfaces with this, list of things or whatever, but that's a lot of the gaming is I just want to experience it. I want to have cool stories and cool experiences or whatever. Maybe that is why it's all so broadly even, is because I just want to have fun.
But I think that's the free spirit thing. You're not sitting down like, I want this reward from this. I want to make the world a better place. I want everyone else to have fun. No, I want to have a good time.
I want to make the world a worse place.
I'm sitting down because I want to have a good time.
Right. It's fair. That's fair. I think so. I think looking at it that way, you're right. I'm surprised on mine that the disruptor wasn't higher, because
that's what I said too.
I really like the struggle against other players, because no one is trying to get over on you like another player, because they only have one job: run that character, right? Whereas whoever's running the game, whether it's a storyteller, a dungeon master, a game master, or whatever, they have to run the entire world, right? So they've got a lot more mental energy to expend on everything as opposed to just spending it on me, right? And so I want to struggle against other players. I want them to try to come at me, and I want to try and push back at them. And I like that back and forth, right? And it doesn't work in every game, and it doesn't work at every table. But I think because a lot of the people that are our games have played in LARPs together, so we have this just sort of unwritten rule that's, it's okay, whatever. As long as it's justified within the game and it makes sense, then it's okay, right? I would never go at a character just because I'm bored. But if it makes sense in terms of the game, then that's what it's fun. That's what I want to do. It adds to the world. And then I also like how you have characters that deeply hate each other, but have to work together to get this task done, right? Because that's, I like the idea of competing motivations that are driven towards the same goal, though.
It was a better story.
Yeah, yeah.
It just is.
Right. Well, no one likes the duo that gets along.
I mean, they're okay, but as long as you have other things too going on. But yeah, so do you want to talk about anybody else that took the? I feel like Carrie is just socializer, not surprised. Well, the philanthropist makes sense to me too, because I very much like games that are okay. I guess this isn't fair. Like I like the gray and the horror, and we all know that. But when it comes to adventure games, the classic kind of games, I like to have a higher good versus evil kind of purpose, or evil versus good, whatever team you're on. I don't care. But
hooray, team evil.
That is why I like fantasy. And I know people are like, oh, this is so tired or whatever. But I find it refreshing from all the other games we play to just be like, all right, I'm on team A, you're on team B.
Well, I think also maybe when you look at the philanthropist part of it, maybe you shouldn't be looking at it in sort of an altruistic moral sense, good versus evil. I think you can also look at it in the sense that I've sat down to play this game with my friends, and I'm okay taking a back seat to let other people have some spotlight time and have fun, right? And I think that's might be the most important part of this. And if you look down our list, everyone is something philanthropist. So, Carrie is socialist philanthropist. I'm free spirit philanthropist. You're achiever philanthropist. Kurt is socialist philanthropist. And so I wonder if it doesn't make for better table cohesion in terms of playing towards a story, or playing and being okay with some player versus player interaction if it serves the game and the story, right? All of it. Because when I think philanthropist, I think it's a little pigeonholey to say it's good versus evil, right? Maybe it's philanthropy and more in the terms of like
it
the
is
group.
A little, but I like that too, is what I'm saying.
Well, right, but what I'm saying, if you take it into account, but also make it a little broader and say it's the philanthropy of the table, right,
Mm-hmm.
of the group, and then it becomes, like I said, more about telling a compelling story and having those just awesome moments at the table. And I think that if you see, it's going to sound kind of like, it's weird to give yourself a compliment or whatever, but like our gaming group is we've cultivated over a long time, right? And we've played games and challenged each other and done some cool things. But we're all, generally speaking, when we're sitting down, we're all wanting something different out of the game, but we're all playing to have a good story and a good game as an overarching goal, right? And I think that's what makes the best tables, is that when you see that sort of push-pull and that give and take that exists inside the game, right? For spotlight time and all that kind of stuff. Kind of rambling, but like, I don't know, just a roundabout way to say, to have the table as a sort of as a I don't know, overall community is a weird word to use. I don't even know what the right word is, but it's like something where you're
I like the word fellowship. Maybe there's a ring involved.
You're around a table that's ring shaped.
There's probably
it's round.
9 of you.
But does that, I realize I'm rambling quite a bit, but does that make sense though, in terms that you're willing?
I see what you're saying. It was a social activity. We all came here to play a game together.
Right.
Like, that is what it is. But at the same time, like, there may be other groups where nobody, like, philanthropist might be somebody's lowest score. Like, maybe I came here to play, in a more war game kind of sense, as opposed to a more social game sense, I don't know. I guess after all this discussion and actually talking about this and looking at the breakdown, do you think as a GM this would be useful to you at all to have like your players do and actually look at? Is there benefit to this?
So nothing on here surprised me for our group, but that's also because we've been gaming together for a long time, right? And 10 plus years basically, right? So nothing on here surprised me, but I think that there might be some value to this if you did this with your gaming group that you hadn't been gaming with, like not even just one person in the group, right? So generally people kind of come and go as the gaming group goes, as time goes by, right? But let's say you've got 5 people in this group, right? And three of you have been there for quite a while. We'll say 5+ years, right? And then you've got a brand new person who just got here and they've been there for less than a year. And then another one who will split the difference and say it's 3 years, right? So I think that there is some value to be learned in what you might find out about some of the players that you have that are newer to your group, because maybe they're just playing the game that's being ran because that's the only group that they have to play with right now, Not that they're not having fun, but if they had a choice, they might play something different or they might do something different. So I think that there might be some value in that, but I do think that it said you need to tell them if they're going to take this, like I said before, don't be afraid to be at one end or the other. Don't force it, but don't be afraid to be at one end or the other because I don't know that there's a lot to be gained from what is on mine. Like if you're looking to use this as a tool, you're just going to look at it and be like, well, James picked the middle of the road every time, right?
But I think still looking at your peaks, like, so your game, I think one of the big things to be gleaned from this is that if possible, your game should address all of these 6 types of things.
Oh, yeah.
In the way that you're challenging players and just presenting your plot and the whole thing, right? But maybe then when I am designing an encounter, you know how you do. You design an encounter with a certain player in mind,
right.
and you try and split those up so that everybody is involved in that encounter, but its emphasis is placed more on one player or another, and you rotate that around. Mm-hmm. So when I'm designing an encounter for Carrie, I include several elements, but I make sure that socializing is definitely a part of that. There's some kind of interaction portion involved, and then when I'm coming to your thing, maybe I'm making this challenge, but I'm not really figuring out exactly what the end game is, and I'm kind of giving you a little more leeway to see how you're going to solve that challenge and giving you maybe like fewer clues to get that job done.
I think at the opposite end of that as well, you could use this as a guide to see that if we're at a point in the story and someone is unplugging a little bit and not interacting, maybe it's not because they don't find the game compelling. Maybe it's this one instance of whatever it is, maybe it's they're low on socializer or whatever, and they just don't find that part as compelling. So maybe they are just not as engaged at that moment. So I think it may be a good tool for also finding what people don't enjoy as much and realizing that everybody needs to have their spotlight time. But if you see someone not engaging in that kind of scene or whatever it is, that it's not that big of a deal. That's just not what they're here for, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else you feel like we can say about this?
I don't know. I guess the last thing that I would say is that sometimes it's fun to take these and be surprised, and then it makes you be a little introspective about what it is that you do in games, right? Because there's no harder critic than yourself, right? So then you take this and you look at it, and I'm like, when I saw mine, I thought, I kind of see this, but I don't know, and it made me wonder and take a different look on how I'm gaming and what I'm doing, and is what I think I'm doing and what I'm actually doing, are they two different things? Because sometimes they are, and then it takes a minute to sort of reflect and realize, oh, I have been doing that the whole time, right? And sometimes that's a cool pill to swallow, but even if you don't use this for your group, it might be interesting to just do and sort of look at it and consider what it is that you're actually chasing down in games. Because sometimes we think we want one thing and when we in fact want something else, right? And then it may make you realize that, oh, I do just want to gain levels and experience and get cool powers and chase that kind of stuff, which is fine, but it's I think you're better served by knowing what it is that you're getting, what you prefer to get out of gaming, as opposed to sometimes you just stumble into things and realize, ooh, I like this, right?
Yeah. I guess kind of the only question that's still unanswered that I kind of queried at the beginning then was, do you feel like this informs your choice of games that you run, or how you design your own plots when you're running a game?
So let me give you a nice wishy-washy answer.
Oh, good.
So, well, I think it does in a way. So like the way you talked about World of Darkness games that I set up and run, right? Or just general games that I set up and run. I like to build a world, and generally speaking, unless I'm making an adventure for you. So like when I run one-shots, I'm not a free spirit, generally speaking, right? I have a specific task in mind. This is the beginning. This is what a couple endings probably look like. And how do we get from point A to point B? So in the sense that I still engage some of that free spirit stuff, because I don't want to plot your points. I just am not interested in that. I like to build a scenario for you to engage with. Here's a beginning. Here's several possible endings. Which one do you choose and how do you get there? That's what gaming is to me in my mind, right?
I can see mine for sure. The philanthropist achiever, I give you specific goals and challenges that I expect you to overcome, and I make them in some way cushy and rewarding, like in a emotional sense.
Right.
I try and make them emotionally powerful and not just number related. So.
I hadn't thought about it in that way, in that sort of emotionally powerful way too.
Well, that's to me where the altruism comes in.
Okay. I can kind of see it, but like, I guess it's weird when you apply that kind of a thought process to horror, because, while it's not altruistic, it is still that emotional payoff that you're looking for in that type of game.
But that's exactly what I'm looking for in that type of game. That's why I like horror. It's one of two reasons. One, because it's always worse than real life, so it makes everything else seem less bad. And two, because it gives me a chance to fight against the things that I have no power to overcome in real life.
Oh, okay.
It's that kind of oppression. It's that kind of evil. And now I have an actual power to rally against that.
So
where in life, I see myself as weak and unable to make change happen.
Isn't that in exact conflict, though, with Bluebeard's Bride?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm like, you do a really good job running that game. We're not struggling against any, like we kind of struggle, but
you're struggling.
You're gonna lose, right? I mean, that's all.
Struggle is getting you nowhere. But you're struggling,
right? Okay, just so long as we acknowledge that it's in complete conflict with Bluebeard's Bride.
Well, that's more of the first point. Like nothing in my real life is as bad.
Oh, okay, that's true.
Is what we're creating here.
Well, thank you.
Take emotions that I've had, dial it up to 12,000.
Thank you for declaring me a better husband than Bluebeard. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Hooray for that. Don't go in the closet. So I guess the last thing I have kind of ties into what you were mentioning before. Do you see this list, and you mentioned what games you run, but do you see specific games in terms of like World of Darkness and Dungeons and Dragons and Call of Cthulhu in those kind of veins of things, or Powered by the Apocalypse, right? Do you see...
I would like to say yes, because there are games that I just like more than others. But honestly, you could incorporate these elements into any kind of game that you're running.
No,
so it's
I
not
agree.
like...
But what I'm saying, though, is certain games focus more on certain things, right? Mm-hmm. So do you think that these point towards specific games?
No. I still say no, not really. Maybe a little, but I think the game has more to do with the person that's running it and the people that are playing it to a large degree.
That's true. But I think
yes, okay, some games are geared more towards like player rewards like a game, and some are geared more towards socialization or free. Okay, yes, but at the same time,
I realize in an ideal world, every game is
a weird
ran.
Question.
Yeah, I know. I know what you're saying, but like I just looked at it and made me think because
I guess when I did look at it, I thought, so like when I looked at Carrie's and the games I think of that she likes, it makes sense with what she likes and doesn't like. So she likes World of Darkness a lot. And she likes D&D, but she creates her own heavy socializing elements when she's running that game that a lot of people do not, you know. Mm-hmm. She really doesn't like Warhammer 40K. That is a system-heavy, physical player game, reward-heavy kind of game. You know what I mean? So I can see that. Now, can you run it with aspects of socializing? Sure. Can you run it with, free spirit, open exploration? Yeah, sure. You're on like a random planet and you're trying to investigate and, go have that.
That's Absolutely. Dark Heresy, right?
Right. But, I can see that for her. And like when you look at Greg's, when I think about the games that Greg likes, he likes D&D, he likes Hackmaster, he likes very player-centric, more gamey type games. The socializing, he's not a big fan of, indie games and cooperative storytelling. Like, that's not his bag. He wants crunch, And so I see that there. But the philanthropist and the achiever ones are so much more kind of open-ended to me because they have just more to do with the kind of challenges that you set in your plot as opposed to, every kind of game is going to have those sorts of things, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
it's because we're telling a story.
The player and the socializer to me seem like the most obviously informative of what kind of game you would like.
Right.
Like if you're really high or low on one of those. Maybe I'm wrong though.
Well, I think that you could draw the same kind of dichotomy between free spirit and philanthropist though, because free spirit is like, hey, figure out what you want to do, stumble around in the world, while philanthropist is like the way you're describing it is, here's a good versus evil kind of dichotomy. Pick a side, right? Mm-hmm. So I think
I see free spirit and achiever as more of a dichotomy because achiever involves overcoming challenges, which means you have to set specific challenges to be overcome.
I don't know.
As opposed to free exploration.
Right. Well, I think, and maybe this is something that we're bringing into this too, is that with a lot of stuff, there was, when you talk about like gamer types, right? It was like they had two ends of a spectrum. It was like power gamer and storyteller. So at one end, you're all about crunching the numbers and being the most effective. And at the other end, you're only about the story and don't care about the numbers, right? And I think maybe why this appeals to me more than that style does is because this doesn't do that. We're trying to put in this thing where each of these things are at one end of a spectrum when in fact it's just like a giant Venn diagram. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they don't...
The more I look at it, the more I can see it. Like socializer opposed to player, free spirit opposed to achiever, philanthropist opposed to disruptor. Seems to make the most sense to me.
Yeah, but I don't know that they exactly fit in that kind of way though.
I just don't like the old terms because storyteller sounds lovely. Power gamer has so much negative connotation to it.
Very true.
That... like you're never going to get out. If you told me you're a power gamer, that would be an insult. That's not something that you politely say to somebody.
Right. Well, and there's some value in that system mastery because we had it back in the day with 3rd edition.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were very much down in the weeds at the beginning of it. And then sort of like once you get there, it's like, okay, I got it. Now I can focus on other things. But there was a lot of time spent in learning how things work together because that's what that game rewarded in a way. And then once we figured out and had the system down, it was like, okay, now let's plug all the other fun bits that we also like from other games that include larger stories and this kind of stuff into it. So, but I agree. That's one of the reasons why I don't like the idea of how a lot of the other ones are because they do sort of place an inherent value on one that is good and one that is not, So, right on. Well, do you have anything else about this or should we wrap this one up here? It was just an interesting thought. It was something cool and fun to do. So I think I would recommend we'll post the link to this little quiz in the show notes. And there's a thread on Facebook. So if you're not part of our the Just One More Fix Facebook group, you can go ahead and join over there and post your results and let us know what you think about it and see what you if there's any insight that you glean from this. Oh, or if you think it's complete crap. Either way, I think, it's a solid 50-50. something to be gained and crap. Right on. Well, you guys know that we're a member of the Gonna Geek Network, so quick plug for All Things Good and Nerdy, episode 350, Willie Got Words. All Things Good and Nerdy crew is back this week and get a bit serious to discuss the supposed controversy surrounding Captain Marvel. Spoiler alert, there's no issues other than internet trolls. Before diving into the geeky news, Willie has the details on addition and subtraction from Suicide Squad 2. Chris says farewell to PS Vita. And Anthony has the latest on some of the Shady Fox actions. So check them out. That is All Things Good and Nerdy, episode 350 on the Gonna Geek Network. So that'll do it for us this week. If you guys like what we do here, you can support us at patreon.com/justonemaorefix and join the awesome ranks of our other Patreon supporters like Tiziano Furlano, Alan White, Simon McNair, and the OG Todd Olson. So thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can support us at patreon.com/justonemorefix or follow us on Twitter at JustOneMoreFix.